Every video here on 616 Entertainment is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed the show here today, consider signing up. You'll get early access, exclusive videos and podcasts, and more. Pro Wrestling Tees has the merch. As always, thank you for watching. Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael. No, not those guys, these guys! The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were everywhere when I was a kid. Having been born in December of 1990, I was around for the majority of the animated series run. This show, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and Batman the Animated Series were as vital to day-to-day life as air and water, believe me. The Turtles predate their titular cartoon, with the team's big debut coming in the shape of a comic book all the way back in 1984, but the Turtles' overall history isn't our focus here today. Nor are there many action figure iterations, though these are awesome too. Check out my buddy Captain McKay's video right after this one, if that's your style. Today we focus on a trilogy of Ninja Turtles video games, all of which released on the Nintendo Entertainment System between 1989 and 1992. From Shredder to the Technodrome, from the sewers to the city streets, and from Bebop and Rocksteady to Toka and Razor, it's all here. Pick up the phone and order a pizza, Dan-Dans. It's turtle time. It's turtle time? That's not even a thing. Oh, that's not a good start. Cowabunga! No, the moment for a catchphrase has come and gone. Maybe next time. Oh, how you doing, Dan-Dans? My name is Ian. Welcome to another in-depth retrospective here on youtube.com/616entertainment. Listen, if you support me over on Patreon, it was literally you that brought this video to life, as this is the fourth retrospective to come from the Patreon support project. If you're not signed up yet and you enjoyed today's video, consider signing up. We still have huge projects on that list, including retrospectives of Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, the history of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, a retrospective on Metal Gear Solid. I'm probably gonna refresh the list soon. So if you're one of those people who's been like, oh, I want to see the history of Tony Hawk, and you didn't sign up, clock's ticking. I'm about to replace it with something else, so if you want to see it, sign up and let me know. But that's all the plugging I need to do here at the top. I know you didn't come here to learn about Patreon. You want to see a video about the Ninja Turtles games on NES, so let's get to it. It's turtle time. Why do I keep saying that? Ultra Games developed the entire trilogy we'll be looking at today. And many of you probably know this, but in the event that you don't, I got you. Ultra Games were as official as Acme Corporation, as legit as Vandalay Industries. The reason all of the re-releases of these games are credited to Konami, and not Ultra Games, is because Ultra Games was Konami. You see, back in the mid to late 80s, Nintendo were deadly serious about protecting their business and avoiding another video game crash, similar to the one that had cratered the industry for years, before the NES showed up and resurrected the entire scene. The official Nintendo seal of quality was stamped on every licensed game, but developers were only allowed to release 5 games per year. This was to prevent a market overcrowded with garbage. Konami, the prolific developer they were at the time, had zero interest in limiting themselves to just 5 titles per year. So what did they do? They made a ton of games and released some of them under the Konami logo and others under this new Ultra Games logo. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And if you think that's dishonest or underhanded, just remember that Nintendo stamped their official seal of quality on games like Where's Waldo, Superman, and Deadly Towers. Konami's crimes don't seem so bad in comparison, do they? Now, I didn't personally own Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when I was a kid. I owned the sequel, and that was awesome. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. My personal stories and memories may be a bit lacking here for the first game, but that's alright. Let's dive in. I won't mince words. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the NES does not have a very positive reputation. The game is rife with slowdown. It's extremely difficult, and overall, in my opinion at least, it's not very fun to play. The enemies are numerous, seriously, they're all over the place. They're fast, they're erratic, and when they damage you, because they will damage you, your post-hit invincibility lasts a quarter of a second. It's rare that an enemy will get just one hit on you if you get cornered, as there's not even enough time to create some space before your iframes wear off. This underwater level is infamous. Just look at it. This is insanity. Now might be a good time to explain how sluggish, delayed, and floaty the controls are. Whether you're swimming or jumping on a small platform, pinpoint accuracy is as important as it is impossible, and those are two requirements that don't exactly go hand in hand. Maybe somebody can tell me what's going on with April O'Neil here. I'm sorry, but did anyone else notice that she's asshole naked? Goodness gracious, kidnapping her was bad enough. Did they really have to steal her clothes too? Later on, we can see she's wearing her usual jumpsuit, but where's the color? April always wears a bright yellow outfit, and this is not bright yellow. I can't believe I've never heard anyone else talk about this before. It's crazy. Bebop and Rocksteady were the culprits behind April's kidnapping, and this dastardly duo make up for 2 of the game's 6 bosses. In later levels, we battle Mouser, Mecha Turtle, the Technodrome, and Shredder himself. Oddly enough, the big, bad, bloodthirsty Shredder is arguably the easiest of the bunch. Knock him down and just don't let him back up. You'll be fine. Mecha Turtle is a pain, partially because he's got 2 different forms, neither of which are a walk in the park. I complained earlier that this game is punishingly hard, and it is, but it's worth noting that each turtle has their own playstyle. Leonardo and Donatello's longer weapons make them extremely useful for reaching enemies that would otherwise be out of range. Michelangelo's nunchucks are fast as hell, as are Raphael's sai. And hitting the pause button allows us to switch between the turtles at any given moment. And they don't share a health bar, meaning that if one of your boys is on the verge of defeat, you can protect him by bringing in somebody else. These strategies can help. They're actually required if you're going to try and beat this game, but they don't help much, in my experience. Between the terrible platforming controls and simply unfair challenge put forth by the enemies, this game kinda sucks. If you're into it, good. I'm happy for you, but I'm not a fan. I've already spoken about April O'Neil being naked, which is the weirdest thing I've come across with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but there are a few other oddities that I want to highlight before we move on. The overworld stages being interactive is pretty cool. I like freely walking around, and driving the turtle van is even better. My complaint comes into play when we take a look at how nonsensical and unfair these sections are. There are steamrollers and Foot Clan trucks driving around, and obviously they don't like us, so they're on the attack. Not only are the turtle van controls garbage, you'll constantly get stuck on walls and the van will refuse to make turns on occasion for some reason, but just watch this. Where did that guy go? There's a wall there. I can't pass through. And when I try to leave, where did this guy come from? How are all of these idiots here at the exact same time? This isn't a challenging level, Dan Dance. This is bad game design. This is a perfect example of bad game design, and I don't appreciate it. I also don't appreciate the fact that the Turtles' theme song is nowhere to be found. Come on, man, that song is amazing. How dare you? The game's soundtrack is pretty damn good though, that's for sure. You've been hearing it underneath this entire video. And you know what? That's the biggest positive I have for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on NES. The soundtrack is great. And these cutscenes are awesome too. Shredder taking over the television feed is sick, there's no doubt about it. There, I did it. I paid the game a few compliments. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles released for the NES on June 25th, 1989, and it sold a shitload of copies. Over 4 million copies inside of its first year on store shelves, to be clear. I looked it up, and yes, over 4 million officially qualifies as a shitload. You may recall me stating that this game doesn't hold a great reputation, and that's true. It has its fans, certainly. Maybe you're one of them. But the majority of gamers, both critics and consumers, weren't overly excited by this Konami offering. I did learn in my research that Nintendo Power reviewed this one very, very well, going as far as to award it their Game of the Year over Mega Man 2, Ninja Gaiden, Tetris, Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, DuckTales, Dragon Warrior aka Dragon Quest, and more. These awards were fan voted, sure, but good God, what a world we live in, right? Where do you stand on the 1989 TMNT video game? If you've got memories of this one from back in the day, I would love for you to share them down in the comments. Or maybe you played this one for the first time in your 20s. That's fine too. I want to hear about your stories. We're just getting started with today's video though, so don't go anywhere. It's turtle time. God damn it. It just doesn't work. Now today's main focus are the NES games, the entire trilogy. We've already established that. But it is extremely important to shine a quick light on the Turtles game that hit arcades in 1989 as well. If you've never experienced this for yourself, I'm so sorry. Gathering around this machine with my brother and my friends at birthday parties and roller rinks, or at Fun Times Square in Alsip, Illinois back in the 90s when I was growing up. Man, the age of the arcades has come and gone, but those memories will last forever. Why am I telling you about the arcade game?
Ultra's improved your favorite arcade game. First, we added 2 new levels, then packed it with bigger, stronger enemies and a ton of extra foot soldiers. Next, we punched up the action with knockout new attack moves and crime-fighting scenes like the Ninja Castle. If that doesn't swell your shell, we made one more small adjustment. Introducing the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game, today's biggest hit. For your NES.
That's right, Dan. The sequel to the original Turtles NES title was a port of the fantastic arcade game. This was unbelievable. Those awesome levels, those awesome bosses, now all right at home on our Nintendo Entertainment System. It felt impossible. It didn't sound like real life, but check it out, one after the other.
Fire! Hang on, April.
Does the arcade version look better? Absolutely. Come on, we're talking about 8 bits here on the NES. But from the cutscenes to the gameplay, it's practically all here. And like you heard there on the commercial, this NES version even has a few boss fights and levels you won't find in the arcade. How do you like that? I also don't want to bury the lead on this any more than I have to. I complained that the prior game didn't include the Ninja Turtles theme song. Well, that complaint was rectified. I often share personal stories with you guys whenever I cover a movie or a game that I have prior experience with. And if you frequent this channel, you know that. You've heard the stories about Batman on NES being the first video game I ever played in my life. You've heard the stories of me laying in the lawn dressed as Michael Myers on Halloween and I would sit up and scare the shit out of trick-or-treaters. You've heard these stories. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 on the NES comes with stories I've never told before. Stories that I hadn't even thought of in a long time. First of all, everybody has those certain sounds or images that trigger a core memory, right? Maybe for you it's the sound of obtaining a Chaos Emerald in Sonic the Hedgehog. Or grabbing a mushroom and powering up in Super Mario Bros. But one of my most powerful memories is a boss flashing red in Ninja Turtles 2. Yes, I realize it's actually orange, but as children and on our old TV, it looked like it was red to my brother and I. I'm just sticking to tradition. This was actually a distant, hazy, nearly forgotten memory. I knew that there was a game I had when I was a tiny little kid where big bad enemies would flash when they were almost down, but I couldn't remember which game it was. I knew the fight in question took place in an apartment or a house or something, but I couldn't remember where it was or who I was fighting. This was it, right here. The first boss fight in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, against Rocksteady. Seeing this again, and really playing this again, it was a flood of emotions. Honestly, it was one of the most powerful nostalgic experiences I've ever had while making one of these videos. Here's another memory, and this one is super dumb and not nearly as heartfelt. I used to go nuts playing this game. I'd be in my room literally jumping up and down, holding in my piss because I didn't want to stop playing the game. I would zone out and lick my lips obsessively for some reason, and I would wind up with this painful, bright red smile like the goddamn Joker. If this sounds stupid, that's because it is. Have you caught the Pizza Hut logos in the backgrounds of these levels? Full-on product placement in an NES game, Dan-Dans. Not something that was very common back then. And it didn't stop at logos. A coupon for a free pizza came packed in with every copy of the game. Man, now I really want pizza. And not that Pizza Hut bullshit. I live in Chicago. We have real pizza here. But that's besides the point. I'm hungry. That's what I'm getting at.
It's 2024. We live in the era of online multiplayer. But back in the day, back in the early 90s, we didn't even use the word multiplayer. We'd be walking up and down the aisles of the video store looking for a game to rent, and we would ask if a game was 2 players.
This sequel does indeed support 2 players. Now, obviously, I recorded all of my gameplay solo, but I mean, that just is what it is. Back in the day, this was 2 players all the time. From the very first level in the burning apartment building, which for some reason has gigantic cannonballs endlessly tumbling down the stairs, into the sewers where mini Mausers burrow in through the walls, out to the snowy streets with a boulder-throwing Tora, who is one of the NES exclusive bosses, by the way, the other being Shogun, whose home level includes tigers that phase out of artwork on the walls and into reality. That's awesome. Another thing I didn't remember clearly from those days all those years ago were the cutscenes that progressed the story between levels. The turtles rushing into the fire to save April. Michelangelo falls on his ass. Shredder grabbing her and jumping out the window. He ties her up with the help of Baxter Stockman. Rescuing April earns us a nice little smooch on the head. The turtle van crashes off a bridge. Playing this game and creating this video, I feel like I'm restoring lost files on my hard drive, you know?
I don't know about you, but in my experience, it can be hard to recommend NES games to people who either didn't grow up with this console or they just have no interest in these 8-bit blasts from the past for many reasons. I would imagine, chief amongst these reasons, is the perceived level of difficulty.
Ninja Gaiden is one of my favorite NES games ever made. It's also so insanely hard that in 33 years, I've still never beaten it. Castlevania, an all-timer for me. I've killed Dracula and brought this game to a close maybe twice in my entire life. Hey, flashback to 10 minutes ago, the original TMNT game is ridiculously difficult. It's a common problem, for sure, but it's not a problem that really carried over into this sequel. Getting mobbed by Foot Clan soldiers of all colors can certainly be detrimental to the longevity of your playthrough, but the odds are far from insurmountable. I would fully recommend TMNT 2 to anybody checking out some classic games, and honestly, I consider this game a must-have for each and every NES collection. This is what I wanted to be doing in the original game, playing as whichever turtle I desired, preferably with a friend, and fighting enemies from level to level in beat-em-up fashion. There's no annoying platforming, no delayed and awful controls, no cheap enemies or garbage situations that make you feel like there's not even a proper strategy for moving forward. On this channel, I always talk about what makes a great sequel. You always want the next installment to be bigger and better, right? Well, in my opinion, Turtles 2 delivers in full force. And my opinion isn't the only one that matters, obviously. As a matter of fact, Turtles 2 was considered a must-have by about 2.5 million other people, making the sequel another high seller. In the 1990 Nintendo Power Awards, this arcade classic brought home was nominated in 4 categories, including Game of the Year, bringing awards home for Best Hero and Best Villain. I stated in my retrospective on the Sunsoft Batman games that Batman was one of those titles that all of your friends had in their collection. Turtles 2 was the exact same, in my experience, and god damn was that amazing. Staying up to the wee hours of the night, infiltrating the Technodrome, being faced with a battle against Krang, and a multiplying Shredder back to back. Wow, what a great time to be a kid.
Millions of fans, millions of copies sold, and much, much more to come. Are you ready to dive into the final entry in the Ninja Turtles NES Trilogy? Hold on to your shells, Dan-Dans, because it's Hold on to your shells, Dan-Dans. Let's take a look.
What do you remember about 1992? I know my audience doesn't skew very young. The majority of Dan-Dans are between the ages of 25 and 44. But I do recognize that some of you weren't even alive in 1992. That's okay. What I'm getting at is this. The landscape of gaming changed in 1992 with the introduction of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. 16-bit graphics with a palette of 32,768 different colors, a sound chip that left the NES in the dust, and our next game didn't release on the Super Nintendo. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, released in February of 1992 on the Old Faithful, the legendary, the iconic NES. And a bigger disappointment I cannot fathom. Turtles 3 sucks, and you have no I'm just kidding. Turtles 3 is damn good. I was just being dramatic. You might be wondering what's different this time out, as at a first glance, Turtles 3 does look quite similar to the last entry. In some ways, you're right. The combat is mostly unchanged outside of an awesome tossing move that each turtle can now perform. Standing near a gigantic hole or cliff's edge and tossing enemies off to their deaths is one of those things that could never possibly get old. Oh, that's so much fun. And we do have special attacks tied to pressing the jump and attack button at the same time. These are extremely useful, but they do take away a small amount of health, which I hate. Whoever added this mechanic to the beat-em-up lexicon, dude, suck a lemon. But enough about the combat. Look at these levels. The bridge is so sick. Check out the sewers this time. God damn, isometric angle looking real nice here on the NES. Getting inside the Technodrome now gives us a look at Foot Clan soldiers being built in front of our very eyes. But there's no time to gawk because these sons of bitches come to life and attack you on the spot. The surf level, you kidding me? The submarine with the hidden guns and rocket launchers is... Alright, this is where I do have to mention one thing. Turtles 3 is much more difficult than the arcade game. It's not to the degree of the original, and we're still not in Ninja Gaiden territory by any means, but Turtles 3 feels like Konami heard what I said about Turtles 2 not being extremely difficult and said, hey, if you want it to be harder... I should have kept my mouth shut. I do appreciate how that dying now comes with the option of switching out our turtle. This mechanic actually helped me get a ton of varied footage with the entire cast. Thanks, Konami. And yeah, I said Konami. The whole Ultra Games gimmick was done by this point. Rest in peace, Bullshit Shell Company. I haven't commented on the Turtles live-action movies at all, and yeah, those were coming out right around the same time. Why have I not mentioned them? Because today our focus is the NES. I've been telling you that the entire time. But everybody knows that those movies were awesome. Yes, even the third one. I loved the third one back in the day. I had that yellow VHS tape, and I recognize now that it's not the best, but I was a kid at the time. What do you want from me? Mentioning the movies was necessary to put over how cool it was to see Tokka and Razor in a video game. I wasn't then, nor am I now, an expert on the subject, but even as a kid, I recognized that Tokka and Razor were like the weird movie versions of Bebop and Rocksteady. The Manhattan Project allows us to fight all four of these jerks. Add in the evil turtle Slash, Krang, Shredder, Leatherhead down in the sewer, Ground Chuck on the submarine. Be careful because he will rip a piece off the wall and smack a dinger with your green turtle skull. And don't forget the final boss, also pulled straight from the movies. It's Super Shredder. I'm sure you know this already, but Super Shredder was played by Kevin Nash, which is awesome. What's not awesome is the level of slowdown. Many NES games chug a bit when the going gets rough, and if you grew up with this console, it doesn't really bother you. You're used to it. But if I buried the original title over slowdown, I have to hit on it here, because this third entry is the worst in that regard. As far as complaints go, I think that's it. I've got more to gush about. The turtles rubbing the sand out of their eyes, getting flattened like a pancake, burnt to a crisp like a Looney Tunes character. Man, this game is just overflowing with charm. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 sold another 1.4 million copies. How'd it go over? Pretty well, I'd say, taking home another Game of the Year award from Nintendo Power. Did I own this one as a kid? No. Do I wish I did? Absolutely. This was actually the first time I'd ever played all the way through Turtles 3 in my life, preparing for this video. I used the Cowabunga collection, which is available on practically every console there is, so if you're interested in creating or reliving memories of your own, I highly recommend this collection. We focused on the NES Trilogy here today, but the fourth game, Turtles in Time on the Super Nintendo, is legendary to an entirely different degree. TMNT Tournament Fighters is a strange case, releasing on the NES in 1994. That's the year before the damn PlayStation hit the market. Hyperstone Heist on the Genesis is so good, but that's it! I just checked the clock. Turtle time has come and gone. We're all turtled out. Oh, there it is, Dan Dans. That's my retrospective on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games on the NES. If you enjoyed today's video and you want to see videos like this on the Grand Theft Auto games, the history of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and more, sign up to patreon.com/616entertainment at any level you choose. Those are the goals. Those videos will not be made if we don't meet those goals. So, trying to grow the channel. I want to deliver the stuff that you guys want to see. I think we can do this. 2024, I think we can knock these goals out. What do you say? Whether you're signed up to Patreon or you're not, whether you're subscribed here on YouTube or you're not, whether you click like on that little deal or you don't, either way, I want to say thank you for being here today. Thank you very much for watching, and I do genuinely mean that. This is my favorite thing in the world to do, and you giving me the time of day is something I can't say thank you enough for. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. I love ya, and I'll see you next time.